Take a slow scroll through the digital landscape of your own life. It is a river of pure, uncut positivity, a relentless spectacle of human contentment. Here is a friend from college, announcing a new, impressive promotion, their smile beaming from a polished corporate headshot. Swipe. Here is a couple you barely know, silhouetted against a perfect sunset on a tropical beach, their engagement photo looking like a still from a romantic film. Swipe. The perfect children in their perfectly clean clothes, the beautiful home renovations, the marathon finish lines, the artisanal meals, the triumphant graduation photos. It is a non-stop, glittering parade of human success, a curated highlight reel of the happiest moments of 1,000 different lives, all delivered directly to the palm of your hand. If this digital record were to be our civilization's only artifact, future historians would conclude that we had achieved a kind of paradise on Earth. A world of happy, healthy, successful people, living lives of continuous and enviable joy. And then, you put down the phone. The vibrant colors of the screen fade, and the real world rushes in. And with it, a quiet, creeping, and deeply uncomfortable feeling. A feeling of inadequacy, a sense of profound loneliness. A quiet despair that doesn't seem to have a logical source. But it is not just a personal feeling, it is a statistical fact. While our digital walls are being painted with the bright, warm colors of unending happiness, the actual architecture of our inner worlds appears to be crumbling. Rates of anxiety and depression, especially among the young, have skyrocketed in the last decade. Prescriptions for antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications are at an all-time high. An epidemic of loneliness is sweeping through the most technologically connected society in human history. The feeling of burnout has become the default state for millions. How can these two realities exist at the same time? How can we be living in the most successful and happy-looking civilization to have ever existed, while simultaneously being the most anxious, medicated, and lonely? The answer is as simple as it is terrifying. One of these realities is a fiction. A beautiful, seductive, and collectively maintained work of fiction, a mass delusion. We have entered into a grand, unspoken social contract to perform a version of happiness that most of us do not feel. We are both the actors and the audience in an endless, looping play. We applaud the convincing performances of others, while quietly suffering from a profound and isolating stage fright, terrified that someone will notice the tremor in our own hands. This is the great paradox of our time. We are living through the quietest, most comfortable, and most beautifully documented apocalypse imaginable. It is not an apocalypse of fire and brimstone, but an apocalypse of the soul. An era where the world is quietly burning on the inside, but everyone is smiling for the picture. And it forces us to ask the most important question of all. Why are we all so deeply committed to upholding this happy lie, even when we know, deep down, that it is the very thing that is making us feel so profoundly and so uniquely alone? A mass delusion of this scale does not happen by accident. It is not a simple collective mistake. It is a system. And to understand how this system functions, we must understand that the performance of happiness is a new and brilliantly effective form of social control. The great tyrannies of the past controlled their subjects through fear, through prohibition, through the overt violence of the negative. The new tyranny, the one we now inhabit, controls us through a much more subtle and far more insidious force, the tyranny of positivity. The philosopher Byung-Chul is the great diagnostician of this modern condition. He argues that we have moved from a disciplinary society to what he calls a burnout society. The old society controlled us with the negative imperative, "You must not." It was a world of walls, rules, and prohibitions. The new society controls us with a positive one. You can. You can be anything. You can achieve anything. You can, and therefore you should be happy. This sounds like liberation, but Han argues it is a more efficient form of enslavement. He calls this the violence of the positive. It is a violence that does not attack us from the outside, but colonizes us from within. We no longer have an external master forcing us to work. We have become our own masters and our own slaves, relentlessly driving ourselves toward an impossible ideal of perfect productivity and perfect happiness. In this system, there is no longer any room for negativity. Sadness, grief, anger, failure, and doubt are no longer seen as natural and essential parts of the human experience. They are seen as signs of a personal failing. To be sad is to fail at the project of being happy. To feel burnout is to fail at the project of optimizing yourself. And because these states are now seen as a form of personal shame, they must be hidden. They must be denied, suppressed, and medicated away. The relentless cultural pressure to perform positivity becomes a form of violence that we inflict upon ourselves and each other. A quiet but constant demand to amputate the negative half of our own humanity. This social pressure has a perfect parallel in the psychological architecture of the individual, as described by Carl Jung. What we are witnessing on a mass scale is the creation and enforcement of a collective persona. The persona, as Jung described it, is the social mask we wear to be acceptable to the world. And our culture has now tacitly agreed upon what this mask must look like. It must be smiling, it must be successful, it must be positive. The mass delusion, then, is a collective pact we have all made to only ever show our personas to one another. We have created a society that demands a perfect mask and violently shames any glimpse of the messy, authentic, and often negative reality of the shadow that lies beneath. The problem, as Jung knew, is that our true vitality, our creativity, our resilience, and our capacity for genuine connection all reside in the very shadow we have agreed to repress. By collectively agreeing to hide our brokenness, we have created a world of shiny, perfect, and completely hollow masks, and we wonder why we feel so alone. Toxic positivity, then, is not just an annoying trend. It is the enforcement mechanism of this mass delusion. It is the unspoken social contract that says, "I promise not to show you my suffering if you promise not to show me yours." This contract promises a world that is smooth, pleasant, and free of all discomfort. And the price for this comfortable illusion is the possibility of ever having a genuine human connection. I am not immune to this delusion. In fact, for a long period of my life, I was one of its most dedicated and miserable soldiers. I understood on an intuitive level that the modern world required a performance. I saw that vulnerability was often perceived as weakness, and that an admission of unhappiness could be seen as a social inconvenience. And so, I learned to lie. My lie was not a loud or malicious one, it was a quiet, constant, and beautifully curated lie of performed contentment. I became the cheerful architect of my own happy delusion. There was a particular year where my inner world was a landscape of gray ash. I was navigating a difficult professional failure that left my confidence in ruins, and a quiet, slow-motion heartbreak that made me feel profoundly and existentially alone. Most mornings I would wake up with a familiar, heavy sense of dread in my chest. Some days I would have to pull my car over on the way to work, just to cry for a few minutes before reassembling my okay face and walking into the office. I felt lost, fraudulent, and more isolated than I had ever felt in my life. And during this exact same period, my online persona had never been more vibrant. This was the month I posted a series of throwback photos from a beautiful vacation I had taken years before, with a long and poetic caption about how important it is to be grateful for the journey. This was the week I shared a link to a minor professional achievement, framing it with a sense of effortless success. I posted smiling photos with friends, carefully chosen and cropped to hide the deep exhaustion in my eyes. I was the star and the director of a film about a happy, successful, and well-adjusted person. The only problem was that I was not in the audience. Why did I do this? It was not just vanity, it was a desperate survival strategy. A part of me was terrified of being a burden, of being the downer in a culture that demands relentless positivity. I believed that my sadness was a private, shameful problem that no one else wanted to see. But there was a deeper, more tragic motivation. I think a part of me truly believed in a kind of magical thinking. I believed that if I could just perform the happiness convincingly enough, if I could curate the evidence of a good life with enough precision, I might be able to trick my own brain into feeling it. I thought that if I could just get enough likes, enough positive comments, enough external validation, that digital applause might somehow fill the vast, silent emptiness I felt on the inside. Each like was a tiny hit of anesthetic, a brief, fleeting relief from the pain of my own reality. But the great and terrible paradox is that the performance of happiness is the very thing that guarantees your profound isolation. Every positive comment on a smiling photo that was hiding a deep sadness felt less like a connection and more like a confirmation of my own fraudulence. Every like on a post about a life I wasn't truly living was another brick in the invisible wall separating me from the real world. I was desperately crying out for connection, but I was doing it in a language that made it impossible for anyone to see my actual pain. I was crying for help from behind a smiling mask, and the ultimate tragedy was that I had built the mask, I had put it on, and I was the one who was refusing to take it off. I was profoundly lonely, not because no one was there for me, but because I had made it impossible for anyone to see the real, struggling and not okay me. To awaken to the reality of your own happy lie is to be faced with a choice. You can, of course, put the mask back on. It is the easier path. It is the path of least resistance, the path the world encourages you to take. Or you can begin the quiet, difficult, and profoundly rebellious work of learning to be real again. The great secret of the mass delusion is that it seems powerful, but it is actually incredibly fragile. It is a house of cards that is held together only by our collective, silent agreement to keep pretending, and it can be dismantled, not by a grand societal revolution, but by a series of small personal acts of courage. This is the rebellion of being real. The first and most powerful act of this rebellion is the practice of strategic vulnerability. The antidote to the loneliness of the performance is not to simply post your pain online for the world to see. That is often just another performance, the performance of the victim. True vulnerability is a more intimate and far more potent act. The practice is to consciously choose a small trusted circle, 1 or 2 friends, a partner, a therapist, and to make an explicit pact with them to create a reality zone. This is a sacred space, free from the tyranny of positivity. In this space and with these people, you agree to answer the question, how are you with the truth? You share not just your triumphs, but your doubts, your fears, your failures, and your feelings of emptiness. This act is terrifying at first because it violates the great unspoken social contract. But when your authentic, messy, not okay self is met not with judgment, but with empathy and recognition, something miraculous happens. You create a bond of genuine human connection that is 1,000 times more nourishing and real than 1,000 likes on a happy photo. The second practice is to become a critical consumer of happiness propaganda. You cannot stop the endless parade of curated perfection from marching across your screen, but you can change the way you perceive it. You must stop consuming social media as if it were a series of documentaries about other people's real lives. You must begin to see it for what it is, a gallery of propaganda. Each post is a carefully crafted advertisement for a personal brand. It is an act of marketing, not an act of sharing. The practice is to become a media analyst in real time. As you scroll, consciously narrate what you are seeing. This is a strategically chosen image, filtered and cropped to project an image of effortless success. This is a performance of a happy relationship designed to elicit envy and admiration. This simple act of critical labeling creates a crucial mental distance. It neutralizes the emotional poison of social comparison. The images stop being a mirror in which you see your own inadequacy, and they become artifacts, interesting but ultimately artificial, to be studied. The final practice is to create a sanctuary for your own shadow. The mass delusion is maintained by our collective agreement to repress our negative emotions. The personal rebellion, therefore, is to refuse to participate in this agreement within your own inner world. You must create a safe and deliberate space for your sadness, your anger, and your fear to exist. This is the practical work of integrating your whole self. This can be done through journaling. Give yourself permission to write down the ugly, inconvenient, and unhappy thoughts without censorship, without judgment. Or it can be done in conversation with one of your trusted allies from your reality zone. By giving your negativity a conscious and contained space to be heard, you reduce its power to control you from the darkness. You are making a powerful declaration that you are a whole human being, not just a smiling, one-dimensional persona. This private act of integration is the ultimate act of defiance against the tyranny of positivity that defines our age. We began this journey in the strange and lonely landscape of the happy apocalypse, a world where everyone is smiling, while their inner life is quietly burning. We have been taught our entire lives that happiness is a personal achievement, a prize to be won at the end of a long and difficult performance. If we are not happy, it is because we have failed individually. But we can now see this for what it is. The greatest delusion of our age is not the performance of happiness itself. It is the belief that we are alone in our suffering. The most powerful lie is not that everyone else is genuinely happy. It is the quiet, insidious whisper that you are the only one who is not. The antidote to the profound isolation of this mass delusion, therefore, is not to find a better, more effective way to be happy by yourself. It is to find the courage to be not okay in the presence of others. True, deep, and healing human connection does not happen between our polished and perfect personas. It is not a connection of strengths. It happens in the messy, vulnerable, and sacred space where our shadows are allowed to meet. The solution is to stop trying to gain entry into the imaginary community of the perfect and to start building a real community of the broken. It is the shared and compassionate admission that we are all, in our own ways, struggling. We are all imperfect. We are all at times lost, and we are all wearing a mask. Breaking this great delusion begins with a single, small, and courageous act of truth. If you are ready to stop performing and start connecting on a deeper level, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. And let us begin that rebellion right now. Be brave in the comments below, and let's create a rare space of honesty on the internet. Share one thing that is not okay in your life right now. Your vulnerability is not a weakness. It is an invitation. It is the gift that allows the rest of us to feel a little less alone.